It happened in less than a minute. One moment, the airport terminal was filled with the usual chaos, travelers rushing past, announcements crackling over the speakers, kids tugging at their parents' hands. And the next, a German shepherd named Shadow was barking like his life depended on it. The dog's eyes locked on a woman in a long beige trench coat and dark sunglasses, holding the hand of a little girl, no more than 3 years old. Beside her, a man in a dark hoodie guided a small boy, about 5, toward the boarding gates. Shadow's ears shot forward, and he let out a deep, guttural bark that cut through the noise like a siren. Shadow, heel. Logan Brooks, Shadow's handler, tugged at the leash, his voice sharp, trying to keep control. They were in the middle of the Dallas-Fort Worth terminal, for God's sake. Hundreds of people watching, some already pulling out their phones. But Shadow didn't listen. He lunged forward, snarling, blocking the couple's path as they tried to hurry past. The woman's face tightened. The man muttered something under his breath, his eyes darting around. The little girl looked up, eyes wide, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. Logan's gut twisted. Shadow was trained to detect bombs, narcotics, dangerous people. He'd never seen him react like this to a family before. "Sir, ma'am, I need you to stop," Logan called out, his voice firm, trying to manage the scene. The man shot him a quick, tense smile. "We're late for our flight. Just trying to get these two home." His accent was flat, untraceable, but Shadow wasn't backing down. His growls deepened, paws planted firmly on the ground, tail rigid like a steel rod. Logan tried again, his voice low. "Shadow, down." No response. The dog's body was taut, muscles vibrating like a coiled spring. His nose twitched, locked on the little boy's jacket, then the woman's oversized tote bag. Passengers began to slow down, whispering, filming. Logan's radio crackled at his hip, but he didn't reach for it. And in that moment, Logan had to make a choice. Trust the years of K-9 training, or dismiss this as a mistake in a chaotic airport scene. Shadow's bark wasn't just a sound. It was a warning, the kind you ignore at your own risk. The tension was palpable. The woman's grip on the little girl tightened. The boy flinched as the man tugged his hand, trying to pull him away from Shadow's growing intensity. "Shadow, what are you doing, boy?" Logan muttered under his breath, but even as he spoke, he felt it. An uneasy twinge deep in his gut. Something wasn't right. The woman forced a smile, her sunglasses reflecting the terminal's fluorescent lights. "It's okay, officer, we're just in a hurry." But Shadow's nose twitched again and he leaned closer to the boy. The dog let out a low, almost growl-like whine, his gaze fixed like a laser. That's when Logan noticed it, the faintest tremor in the boy's hands. The way the girl wouldn't meet his eyes. The tote bag, too big for a day trip. A chill crept down Logan's spine. "Sir, I'm going to need to check your ID and speak with you for a moment," Logan said, raising. His hand in a calm but firm gesture. The man stiffened. The woman's lips tightened. Shadow's bark cut through the moment again, sharp, urgent, like an alarm bell. "Hey, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more incredible K-9 rescue stories like this. 1. These dogs are out there every day, saving lives, and their stories deserve to be heard." Logan's radio crackled again, a dispatcher's voice in his ear, background noise, but Logan barely heard it. His focus was locked on the family in front of him, and the way Shadow's entire body language screamed that something was off. He took a step closer, slowly, cautiously. "Mind if I take a look inside that bag?" The woman's shoulders tensed. The man's eyes darted to the boarding gate sign. Shadow barked again, this time louder, faster. A sound Logan had learned to recognize in his years of working with K-9s. It wasn't just a bark. It was a signal. Something in that bag, or maybe with those kids, wasn't what it seemed. Logan's pulse quickened. He had a decision to make, and it had to be now. Logan felt the weight of the entire airport on his shoulders. Travelers bustled by, but the air around him seemed thick, heavy, like the seconds were stretching out into minutes. Shadow's bark cut through the noise, sharp, focused, relentless. The woman's grip on the little girl's hand tightened so much that the child whimpered softly. Logan caught it, a barely audible sound that made his stomach twist. The man, Ray, shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the nearest exit as if calculating how fast he could get out. "Sir, I'll need you to step aside," Logan said, raising a hand to stop the pair from moving forward. Evelyn, the woman, forced another smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Her sunglasses were too dark for indoors and Logan couldn't see her expression clearly, but her body language was stiff, defensive. "Officer, we're really in a hurry," she insisted, her voice overly sweet. Shadow lunged again, growling, low, as if he were on the verge of snapping. His teeth bared, eyes locked on the tote bag dangling from Evelyn's shoulder. Logan felt a bead of sweat slide down the back of his neck. Shadow had never acted like this without a reason. "Let me see your ID," Logan repeated, this time firmer, stepping between the couple and the path to the gates. Ray sighed in frustration, pulling a wallet from his back pocket. His hands trembled slightly, almost imperceptibly, but Logan caught it. Evelyn fumbled with her purse, opening it just enough to pull out a driver's license that seemed too new, the plastic edges still crisp. Logan glanced at the IDs, his gut telling him to look closer. The names matched, but something about the photos felt off. Maybe it was the lighting or the subtle tension in their expressions. "Where are you headed?" Logan asked, his tone casual but laced with intent. "Back home." "Seattle," Ray answered too quickly. "Vacation?" "Yeah," Evelyn chimed in, gripping the tote tighter, her knuckles white. "We just visited family down in Houston." Shadow's barking spiked again, this time higher, more urgent. Logan noticed the way the little boy, Ethan, flinched at the sound, his eyes darting to the floor. Lily, the little girl, bit her lip, her small hands clenching at the hem of her dress. "Is everything all right, kids?" Logan asked, trying to keep his voice calm and inviting. Neither child answered. The boy's silence was deafening. Shadow took a step closer, his nose twitching, and started to sniff the boy's sleeve. He let out a sharp, singular bark, and then froze, tail straight out, staring directly at Ethan's wrist. Logan crouched, down slightly, meeting Ethan's gaze. "Hey there, buddy. Are you okay?" The boy's lower lip quivered, but he didn't speak. Evelyn quickly stepped forward, placing her body between Logan and the children. "They're tired," she snapped, her voice suddenly clipped. "Long day of travel, you know." But Logan had been in this job long enough to recognize when someone was trying to shut down a conversation. His training screamed at him. Something wasn't right here. "Shadow, down," Logan ordered. But the canine didn't move. Instead, Shadow circled around Evelyn and sniffed at the back of her tote bag, letting out a low, rumbling growl. "Is there something in the bag you'd like to declare?" Logan asked carefully, standing straight again. Evelyn's mouth twitched, her hand gripping the strap like her life depended on it. "Just snacks and toys for the kids." "Mind if I take a quick look?" She hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Logan's radio crackled softly and he reached for it, signaling to a nearby officer without breaking eye contact with Evelyn and Ray. Shadow barked again, and it was a bark Logan knew, a sharp, alert bark, trained to signal danger, drugs, explosives, or something worse. Passengers nearby began to slow, some whispering, others filming the scene unfold. Logan felt the pressure rising. Evelyn glanced at Ray, a flicker of panic flashing across her face. Ray's jaw clenched, his shoulders tensed. That's when Logan noticed it. A thin red mark around Ethan's wrist, like a rope or a zip tie, had been there. The boy shifted slightly, and the sleeve of his shirt slipped just enough for Logan to see the full imprint. His blood ran cold. "Sir, ma'am," Logan said, his voice now firm, all formality stripped away. "I'm going to need you both to step aside with me. We'll need to ask a few more questions before you board." Evelyn opened her mouth to protest, but Shadow let out another growl, louder this time, and the kids flinched again. That's when Lily, the little girl, did something that nearly shattered Logan's heart. She looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes and mouthed the word, "Help." Logan's heart pounded in his chest. He took a step forward, and so did Ray, toward the gate, as if to make a break for it. "Don't." Logan barked, hand on his holster. But it was Shadow who reacted first. The German Shepherd lunged, snapping at Ray's pant leg, tugging him back as the man stumbled, nearly falling. Evelyn screamed, dropping the tote bag. It hit the floor with a dull thud, and something inside shifted, something metallic. Logan moved fast, scooping up the bag, unzipping it. His hands froze when he saw what was inside: a bottle of sedatives, rope, a burner phone, and a small folded piece of paper with 2 names written in block letters: Lily and Ethan. Logan's breath caught. His mind raced, piecing it together. Shadow barked again, but this time it wasn't alarm, it was almost satisfied. Ethan and Lily weren't their children. They were victims. Logan's radio crackled again, dispatch asking for a status update. But all he could do was stare at the bag in his hands and the terrified eyes of the kids. Something dark had been planned here. Something far worse than a simple family trip. And it was Shadow who had seen it first. Logan barely felt the weight of the bag in his hands. His pulse pounded in his ears, the world around him narrowing into a tunnel. Just shadows barking. The terrified faces of Lily and Ethan, and the damning contents of that tote bag. The sedatives. The rope, the burner phone, the list with the kids' names. "Step back," Logan ordered, his voice sharper than steel as he shifted the bag to one hand and unclipped Shadow's leash. Evelyn froze, her eyes wide, darting between Logan and Ray. Ray's fists clenched, jaw tight, nostrils flaring like a cornered animal. The tension snapped in an instant. Ray lunged. "Hey!" Logan shouted. But before he could draw his weapon, Shadow launched forward, intercepting the man mid-stride. The German Shepherd clamped down on Ray's pant leg, yanking him off balance, with a force that sent the man sprawling across the polished airport floor. Ray crashed into a row of chairs, scattering them like dominoes, and Shadow stayed on him, snarling, a blur of muscle and teeth. Evelyn screamed and tried to bolt, grabbing Lily's wrist in a panicked grip, but Logan stepped directly into her path, one arm outstretched. "Don't even think about it." Her sunglasses slipped from her face, revealing a cold, calculating glare beneath the panic. For a moment she hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the exit, toward the security checkpoint, then toward the children. Lily whimpered, and Ethan let out a shaky sob. Logan's heart twisted. This wasn't just a bad situation. This was trafficking. "Let the kids go," Logan barked, his voice reverberating through the terminal. "Travelers," nearby gasped, some stepping back, others frozen in place, clutching their bags. A security officer sprinted toward them, radio crackling. Shadow kept Ray pinned, teeth bared, low growls vibrating deep in his chest. "Logan, you need backup?" the officer called out. "Yeah," Logan shouted, eyes locked on Evelyn. "I've got 2 suspects. Possible kidnapping." "The kids are not theirs." Evelyn's face twisted into a mask of defiance. She yanked Lily's arm again, but this time Lily's small voice rose, a desperate, breathy cry. "Help!" she sobbed, loud enough for the entire terminal to hear. That one word shattered the thin veneer of doubt for everyone around them. Logan stepped forward, slow but firm, one hand raised in a calming gesture. "Ma'am, let her go." "It's over." Evelyn's grip trembled, her fingers loosening just slightly. Logan could see it, the calculation flickering behind her eyes, the weighing of options. Shadow, still growling low, adjusted his stance, ready to launch if needed. Ray lay groaning beneath him, cursing under his breath. "Please, ma'am," Logan urged, voice softer now, appealing to whatever sliver of humanity might be left in her. "They're just kids. Don't make this worse." For a long, tense moment, Evelyn's body tensed like a coiled spring. Then her shoulders sagged. She let go of Lily's wrist and the little girl stumbled back into Logan's arms, sobbing into his shirt. Ethan shuffled forward too, as if his legs barely knew how to move. Logan reached out, steadying the boy with a hand on his shoulder. Shadow finally eased his grip, backing off slightly but keeping a watchful eye on Ray, who lay winded and defeated on the ground. Backup flooded in, a swarm of TSA agents, airport police, and security guards. Evelyn and Ray were cuffed, their Miranda rights read in a practiced, firm voice. Logan knelt down, one arm still around Lily, the other resting lightly on Ethan's shoulder. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low, almost gentle. Lily nodded, through tears, her tiny body shaking. Ethan stared down at his shoes, his breathing ragged. "It's over," Logan told them. "You're safe now." Shadow came closer, his tail wagging low, ears perked. Lily reached out and buried her hands in the dog's fur, clinging to him like a lifeline. Logan felt the knot in his chest loosen just a little. "Good boy, Shadow," he whispered, barely audible over the chaos of the terminal. "Good boy." As the dust began to settle, paramedics arrived to check the kids. Logan spoke briefly with a supervisor, explaining the situation in clipped, efficient terms. Shadow stayed close by, ever alert, ever watchful. When Logan finally had a moment to breathe, he crouched down and looked Shadow in the eye. "You knew," he said quietly, ruffling the fur between Shadow's ears. "I didn't see it, but you did." Shadow tilted his head slightly, eyes gleaming as if to say, "That's what I'm here for." Logan glanced over to where Evelyn and Ray were being led away in handcuffs. The tote bag sat nearby, now tagged as evidence, and he couldn't help but think, what if Shadow hadn't reacted? What if he'd ignored the dog's instincts? A shiver ran down his spine at the thought. Logan looked around the bustling terminal, the travelers who had stopped to watch now slowly moving on, conversations buzzing, kids asking questions. Life had resumed, but the undercurrent of danger still lingered. He knew there'd be paperwork, interviews, maybe even press coverage, but for now, none of that mattered. What mattered were the two small lives that had been saved. Shadow sat calmly at Logan's side, tongue lolling, panting lightly, as if this had been just another day at work. Logan couldn't help but smile. "Shadow," he muttered, shaking his head, "you're the best partner I could ever ask for." The holding room at the airport wasn't much, just a small, windowless space with white walls, a table bolted to the floor, and a pair of metal chairs. Logan sat across from Evelyn, watching as her mask of composure cracked under the fluorescent lights. Her hands, cuffed in front of her, twisted in her lap. She stared at the floor, not meeting Logan's gaze, while Shadow lay quietly at his side, ears perked, watching her every move like a silent sentinel. Logan flipped through the papers in the file before him, the phony IDs, the fake travel documents, the evidence bag with the sedatives, the rope, the burner phone, and those names, Lily and Ethan, written in thick, blocky letters. "You want to tell me what your plan was?" Logan asked, voice calm, low, like they were talking over coffee instead of an interrogation table. Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. She glanced toward the mirror on the wall, the kind you'd see in every cop show, as if she could see through it and sense the agents behind it. Ray sat in another room down the hall, separated for questioning. Logan leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "You know, it doesn't take a genius to figure out this wasn't just some family trip gone wrong." Evelyn flinched, just a little, but enough for Logan to catch it. "Who are they?" He pressed, nodding toward the kids who were now with child services getting medical checks. "Because they sure as hell aren't yours." Her eyes snapped up, and for a split second, Logan saw it. The flicker of something. Anger, guilt, fear? Maybe all of the above. "They're not mine," she muttered, voice barely above a whisper. Shadow shifted, a soft growl rumbling low in his throat, as if he could sense the weight of her words. Logan didn't interrupt. He let the silence hang, thick and heavy, filling the room, like smoke. Sometimes silence spoke louder than words. Evelyn exhaled, shoulders sagging. "They're part of a job," she admitted, voice flat, almost robotic. "We pick them up, we move them, we get paid, that's it." Logan's stomach twisted. His mind raced. This wasn't some random abduction. This was organized, professional, a system. "You're part of a trafficking ring," Logan said, almost To himself, the pieces clicking into place. Evelyn didn't deny it. She just looked away, her jaw clenched tight. Logan felt a knot in his chest. Lily and Ethan, just kids, small and innocent, caught in the worst kind of nightmare. And Shadow. God. If it hadn't been for him, Logan glanced down at his partner. The German Shepherd sat calmly, watching, his body relaxed but ready, like a coiled spring waiting to act. He reached down, giving Shadow a slow scratch behind the ears. "Good boy," he murmured, barely audible. Evelyn shifted uncomfortably, as if the sight of a dog being praised for her capture stung more than the cuffs on her wrists. Logan leaned forward, voice low but firm. "Where were you taking them?" Evelyn hesitated. Logan could see the war inside her. Cooperate or stay silent. "You think you're protecting someone?" Logan asked, tilting his head. "Let me tell you something. Whoever's running this, they don't care about you. They don't care about those kids. You're expendable, just like them. You get caught, they'll replace you tomorrow. But if you help us now, you can at least stop this from happening to the next Lily and Ethan." Her eyes flickered again, and for a brief moment, Logan thought he saw something crack in her expression. "Atlanta," she finally whispered. They were headed to Atlanta. Logan's breath caught. That was a major hub. He stood abruptly, motioning to the agent outside the door. "Get this to the feds, now." As the agent hurried off, Logan looked back at Evelyn. Her face had gone pale, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Hours later, Logan found himself standing outside the terminal, watching the sun sink low in the sky, casting long shadows across the tarmac. His body felt heavy, the adrenaline long gone, replaced by a deep exhaustion that settled in his bones. Shadow sat beside him, tongue lolling, tail wagging slowly, as if sensing the shift in energy. "You did good today, buddy," Logan said quietly, giving him a firm pat on the side. He glanced over at the waiting area, where Lily and Ethan sat with two social workers, holding stuffed animals they'd been given. Lily clung to a small, worn teddy bear, her eyes still wide and wary. Ethan sat rigid, his small hands fidgeting with the zipper of his jacket. They were safe, for now. Logan knew the paperwork would be a nightmare. The reports, the meetings, the media questions, maybe. But none of that mattered as much as the two kids sitting quietly in the corner, alive because of a dog who refused to follow orders. Shadow glanced up at Logan, his eyes steady and calm, as if to say, "Told you so." Logan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You know they train us to trust our instincts," he muttered, almost to himself. "Guess yours are better than mine." Shadow gave a small woof, barely audible, and Logan smiled. They stood there for a while, watching the planes take off and land, the world moving on as if nothing had happened. But Logan knew. He knew how close this had been, and he knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, Logan sat at his desk at the precinct, the half-empty cup of coffee in front of him gone cold. Files were stacked high, printouts of fake IDs, flight itineraries, surveillance footage, the report on Evelyn and Ray. It wasn't just a random case anymore. It was something bigger, way bigger. Shadow lay at Logan's feet, eyes closed but ears twitching at every sound. He wasn't really asleep. Logan had learned that about him early on. Shadow was always on, always ready. Logan scrolled through the data on his screen. Evelyn and Ray had fake IDs that looked good, real good. The kind of IDs that didn't come from a guy in a back alley but from someone who knew exactly how to manipulate the system. There were gaps in the flight logs, mismatched timestamps on the surveillance cameras. It was as if someone had deliberately tried to erase the kid's trail. Logan's phone buzzed. It was an email from a contact in the FBI's Human Trafficking Division. He opened it, scanning the first few lines, and felt his gut twist. Atlanta hub suspected in multi-state child trafficking ring. High-value targets, systematic operations. Stay alert. Logan leaned back in his chair, exhaling a slow breath. Shadow looked up at him, head tilted slightly as if sensing the shift in Logan's energy. "Yeah, buddy," Logan muttered, running a hand through his hair. "This is bigger than we thought." He clicked through the rest of the files. Atlanta, Houston, Miami, cities across the country, each marked by similar cases. Kids disappearing, reappearing in different states, sometimes never reappearing at all. He couldn't shake the image of Lily's small, tear-streaked face or the quiet terror in Ethan's eyes. They were the lucky ones. Logan's radio crackled. "Brooks, you got a sec?" It was Sergeant Taylor, his supervisor. Logan straightened. "Yeah, go ahead." "FBI's sending a task force our way. They want you in the briefing at 11. Logan glanced at the clock. Half an hour to prep. "Copy that. I'll be there," he closed the files, grabbed his notepad, and stood. Shadow rose with him, tail wagging once, then falling still. Focused, alert. Logan looked down at him. "Looks like we're not done yet." The briefing room was packed. Agents in suits, local detectives, even a couple of folks from Homeland Security. A large screen displayed maps of the U.S., with red dots marking cases that were too similar to be coincidence. Logan took a seat, near the front, Shadow at his feet, earning a few nods and smiles from the team. Agent Ramirez, a sharp-eyed woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, took the lead. "This isn't just one couple running off with kids," she began, her voice cutting through the low murmur of the room. "This is an organized network using airports, bus stations, even public events as cover. They use forged documents, bribes, and intimidation to move kids across state lines, selling them into God knows what." A tight silence filled the room. Logan clenched his jaw, fists curling on the table. Ramirez pointed to a map of Atlanta. "2 suspects in custody in Georgia yesterday. Similar M.O., fake IDs. 2 children reported missing out of Tennessee. We believe the ring's central hub is operating from Atlanta, with cells in at least 4 other major cities." She turned to the room, eyes sharp. "Let's be clear, this isn't going away on its own. These people are professionals. They cover their tracks, exploit weaknesses in the system, and they count on us being too busy or too disconnected to see the patterns." Logan felt the weight of her words settle deep. He thought of all the times a report crossed his desk and he'd assumed it was just a custody dispute, a runaway, a one-off. But Shadow had seen what Logan hadn't. After the briefing, Logan stayed behind, flipping through the list of known aliases. He paused on one entry. Jacob Kane, flagged in multiple reports as a suspected recruiter for the trafficking ring. The man's photo showed a clean-shaven, middle-aged guy with dark eyes and a practiced, harmless-looking smile. Logan stared at the image, a chill running down his spine. "Hey, Brooks," Ramirez called as she gathered her files. "You and your K-9 partner. Good instincts yesterday. You probably stopped those kids from disappearing forever." Logan nodded, offering a tired smile. "Thanks, but it wasn't me. It was him." He motioned to Shadow, who sat nearby, panting lightly, eyes watchful. Ramirez gave a half-smile. "Maybe you should listen to him more often." That evening, Logan finally made it home. He sat on the front steps, Shadow beside him, the porch light casting long shadows across the lawn. The air was cool, carrying the sounds of crickets and distant traffic. He took a deep breath, letting it settle in his chest. "Hell of a day, huh?" he said softly, glancing at Shadow. The dog's ears twitched, and he nudged Logan's arm with his nose like he was saying, "Yeah, but we're not done yet." Logan looked out at the quiet street, feeling the weight of what they were up against. The trafficking ring was real, it was big, and it was dangerous. But he also knew they weren't going to back down. Shadow's instincts had been the key, and Logan wasn't about to ignore them ever again. "Come on, partner," he said, standing up and stretching. "We've got work to do." Shadow rose too, shaking out his fur, ready for whatever came next. And Logan knew deep down that whatever it was, they'd face it together. The operation came down fast. 2 days later, Logan stood in a dusty warehouse, on the outskirts of Atlanta, a place that had once been a shipping hub but had long since fallen into decay. The air smelled like rust and old oil, the hum of fluorescent lights barely masking the tension in the room. He watched from behind a Stack of crates as the FBI's tactical team moved in. Black uniforms, rifles raised, signals crisp. Shadow crouched at Logan's side, his body tense, ears perked, eyes locked on the entry. Logan's heart hammered in his chest. It was the same feeling he'd had at the airport, except now, they weren't just stopping one pair of traffickers. This was the heart of the operation. Through the crack between crates, Logan saw him, Jacob Kane. The man looked almost too normal, standing there in a pressed polo shirt, clipboard in hand, like he was just managing shipments. But there was a coldness in his eyes that made Logan's skin crawl. Shadow gave a soft growl, barely audible, like he could sense the darkness radiating from Kane. The lead agent signaled, "Go!" In a blur, the team stormed the warehouse. Commands rang out, hands in the air, followed by the sounds of boots hitting concrete, the scuffle of takedowns, the metallic click of cuffs snapping shut. Kane barely flinched. He raised his hand slowly, that same smug smile on his face. Logan stepped forward, standing tall, Shadow at his side. Kane's eyes flickered to the dog and narrowed. "This him?" Kane said, voice low and even. "The mutt who messed up my plans?" Logan clenched his jaw, feeling Shadow bristle beside him. "No," Logan replied calmly. "He's the one who saved 2 kids, and you're going to prison for a long, long time." Kane's smile faltered, just for a moment. But it was enough. Logan exhaled slowly, tension draining from his shoulders. They'd done it. The operation was over. Later, back at the precinct, Logan sat in the quiet of his office, Shadow resting at his feet. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by exhaustion and a heavy, reflective silence. He stared at the photo on his desk, Lily and Ethan, smiling shyly at the camera. A social worker crouched between them. They were safe. That was what mattered. Logan looked down at Shadow. "You know," he said, his voice soft in the stillness, "they train us to read people, to look for the signs. But you just know. No questions, no doubts. You knew something was wrong." Shadow thumped his tail once, slow and steady, like an unspoken agreement between partners. Logan rubbed his hand over his face, feeling the weight of it all settle in. This wasn't just a one-time case. The ring had been stopped, but others like it were out there. And for every child saved, there were still more waiting for someone to notice. Logan's phone buzzed. A message from the task force. "Good work today, more leads coming in, stay ready." He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Looks like we're not done yet, buddy," he muttered. Shadow lifted his head, eyes bright, ears twitching. He was ready, always ready. That night, Logan sat on his porch with Shadow beside him, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The hum of cicadas filled the air, and the smell of freshly cut grass drifted in on the breeze. Logan sipped a cold beer, letting the quiet sink in. He thought about the kids, their small hands gripping his sleeves, the way they'd clung to Shadow, how they'd smiled when they realized they were safe. He thought about the parents who'd been waiting for them, about the reunions that would happen because of one dog's refusal to back down, and he thought about the people like Kane, about how easy it was for someone to smile, to blend in, to hide in plain sight. Logan shook his head. "Good boy, Shadow," he whispered again, voice rough with emotion. "We make a good team." Shadow shifted closer, resting his head on Logan's knee, and for a long time they just sat there, man and dog, watching the world quietly carry on. "Thank you for following this story. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices, like those of children, go unheard, and it takes someone willing to listen, someone like a K9 with an unshakable sense of loyalty, to make a difference." So here's a question for you. Have you ever had a moment when trusting your instincts, or someone else's, made all the difference? Let us know in the comments. And remember, sometimes the greatest heroes walk on 4 paws.